Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio, your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Hello and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. I am Tracy Cram Perkins, and our show today is Dementia Home Care. I invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, USA Global TV and Radio. I am a four-time dementia caregiving survivor and the author of Dementia Home Care, How to Prepare Before, During, and After. And joining me today is our special guest, NIKKI JARDEN, founder and editor-in-chief of Mirador magazine. Welcome, NIKKI.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to see you.
I'm
Really,
just so excited that we finally got together and got you on air.
woohoo! It's a huge treat for me. Thank you so much. Yeah, we've chatted back and forth over email and such like that, and so this is really fun. So thank you really very
Oh,
much.
absolutely. Well, can you tell our audience who don't know you a little bit about yourself and how you started Mirador?
Yeah, so I have had an aunt who was diagnosed with young onset Alzheimer's when she was just barely 63. And I became her primary family care partner in that journey. And, we were living close by, and I would come and visit her. And she was living in long term care at that time. And one of the things that I noticed pretty quickly was that the things that she really loved to do, which was to read magazines and share the content with me, she kind of stopped doing. Like, she was really a big fan of National Geographic and Oprah and Science, and she had a big collection of different magazines that she liked, conservation magazines. She was really a nature person. And, at the time, I didn't know much about dementia. My grandmother had had Alzheimer's, but she had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's when she was in her late 80s, so I was not actually familiar with dementia. And so when she stopped reading, I just sort of chucked it up to that must be the dementia, and I kind of just moved past it. But within that period of time, within a few months, I also discovered Teepa Snow, and I had gone to one of her live seminars. This was 2017, right around there, 2016 maybe. And she started talking about visual acuity and the kinds of visual changes that happen with a dementia diagnosis. And it occurred to me somewhere in that Rebecca wasn't reading because she couldn't due to her dementia. She might not be reading because she couldn't actually access the content that she was used to reading, the Smithsonian and the National Geographic, those long form stories with the smaller typeface. And I was also noticing this in things like at the restaurant, she was not able to read the menu. So there was something about the visual presentation that was, not congruent with her cognitive effect at that time. So I have a freelance writing background, and I had worked as a managing editor for a local publication for a while. And so there was sort of a moment in there where I'm like, well, I wonder if, this might be something I can put together. Now, previously I'd gone online and looked for dementia friendly publications, and I really had assumed that there would be a vast number of them to choose from. In my, because why not? Why wouldn't there be? Everybody loves to read. This is a huge community of people. Why wouldn't there be lots of different publications available that were formatted in a different way? But there were a couple of chapter books, which I did get her, but she wasn't really a book reader. She liked the short form content of magazines, and she liked the variety of being able to open a magazine and read about, history or art or nature or a story on food or travel. Like, she liked that sort of variety. She was an incredibly creative person. So, yeah, so in that sort of, trying to find that, what it was I was looking for, this periodical that didn't exist, um, I started trying to imagine what that would look like. So one of the things that came across was there was there in the UK, there's the Dementia Voices UK,
Mhm.
and they created something called the Deep Guide for Writing. And so this was something that they had put together with people living with dementia and with care partners and scientists. And they kind of put together a guide. Like, if you're going to write a written page for somebody experiencing dementia, what are the ways you can format that to make it easier? And so that was sort of a starting point. But also, I'm a writer and I am not a graphics person. So I'm lucky enough to have very talented graphics friends. So Ty Juncker, who was the graphic designer that I worked with at the previous magazine, was available and happy to join. And Tave Fashe, who was the lead singer in a band that I'd been playing in, who was the graphic designer for all of our band posters and had just a really great eye. And so that was the team that sort of, so I'd had a prototype publication, which only 2 people have ever seen. Yeah. So we took this, to that team and also to a couple of other people that I knew. Actually, so 3 people have seen it. There's a woman named Judy Lara who was really helpful. She was a administrator in a dementia care home, and she had been a longtime friend, and she really helped me, like, help navigate this whole thing. And so I took this to her and she was like, okay, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. And so it's sort of, over the course of about 18 months, actually came up with the formatting, how long to make these stories, how large to have the type, how to actually create a magazine that might have wide appeal to somebody going through the sort of cognitive changes.
Okay, I love that. I just love everything about that. Um, now, when your aunt, now was your aunt still living when you put your first one together? And so did she get to read it?
Yeah, she did. So she passed, I guess it'll be 2 years now. So she passed in 2023, and the first issue came out in June of 2021. So at this, at the point where the magazine was actually, now she had been a part of the early, we had early adaptations of it, the puzzles and some of the formatting. And so we would bring those in and share them with her community. So she did get to see it sort of in its early iterations. But yeah, as we had published the first one in June and then subsequently several more after that, she did get to see them and we got to interact with them in various ways. And we had some very nice moments around that, even after her disease progressed to the point where she was pretty nonverbal. It taught me that there was still great value in reading out loud. So I learned a lot not only putting together the magazine itself, but also just how valuable reading and the written word and, the spoken voice. And we know this, right? We know that speaking to people that might not, be able to communicate back is still an incredibly therapeutic and valuable interchange.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I know the last year of my mom's life, I read to her every day, and that's how we stayed connected. So I just
Exactly.
that's one of the reasons I'm so inspired by this. So I have to ask this question. How long did it take you to learn to write a 250 or 500 word article? Because that's not easy to write short form.
Well, that is something only a writer is going to ask me. So I appreciate that question. It is actually incredibly difficult and something that I didn't realize was difficult. I had done, so my freelance career, I had written, some a fairly a good number of sort of long form articles for magazines, but I also did a ton of short content. But I'm thinking short content like 800 to 1200 words, and I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake, writing a couple hundred word article. It is not a piece of cake. It is difficult, and we've had contributors that do it very, very well, and we also have contributors that I know are really good writers that said, "Wow, that was a challenge," trying to come up with a pretty, because our magazine is full of lots of different features. So it's the kind of thing that Rebecca would like to see. It's art, science, nature, interviews with people. And so trying to get that, essentially it's 4 paragraphs, 4 to 5 paragraphs. And it has to be complete, and it's all on one page, right? So some of them are easier than others. We always do in each issue a article on a particular bird. Rebecca was a big fan of birds, so there's always an article in there. In this last one, we did one on the peacock, and so that's sort of a 4 or 5, like basically fun facts. And so you can kind of chunk those. But when you're getting into sort of a narrative, or if you're getting into the history of something, like I refer to this often because it was so ridiculous. We did an issue on sound and space, and I wanted to do a piece on planetariums. Like, where did planetariums come from? I love them so much. And like, I'm going to do a piece on the history of planetariums. Well, I didn't realize that planetariums go back to they thousands of years, essentially, the first planetariums. And so that was a huge, task to sort of take it from the very beginning all the way up to present time in 250 words. But, it's that probably was the longest article. It went through lots of different edits with a friend of mine, and but I think we got it done. But yeah, it's hard.
That is so cool. I mean, and yes, okay, it's obvious that I'm a writer because I just know how difficult it is to write in short form. So when you were trying to put this all together and you're looking at how adaptive text is going to help somebody with brain changes, how do you know, or how did you come about learning how to make that work? I mean, was that through Deep? Was that through TIPA? What was the journey there?
I think it was a little bit of both. And it was also getting feedback from our readers and getting feedback from life enrichment directors and activity directors and husbands and sisters and people that were, reading the magazine and saying, hey, you might want to try this, or have you considered this? And also just sort of practice, as we were, putting these together. Like, I think you'll notice, I think you have there the first issue, and I think you have the, volume 12. I think you've got the range. And I think we sort of learned, particularly in formatting, I think we learned there's some differences in between those issues. And we've actually gone back now, and because we do reprint these magazines, they're evergreen. They don't have dates on them. So we'll go back and reprint them for people. And so, as we sort of learned different methods, like, changing some color contrast or bordering a little bit better, or, you know, uh, utilizing a technique called chunking, which is basically to, kind of take each paragraph. So for instance, like that planetarium article, and maybe break it up into a way that's sort of more laid out on a page that's very definite instead of just a long series of text. So I can kind of give you an example of that here. This is the new issue. You all are getting the brand new sneak peek. Nobody's actually seen this yet. So in this new issue, so you can kind of see here a little bit. So see how that kind of, the paragraphs are chunked up a little bit. That kind of makes it easier for the visual eye to sort of land on one piece of text instead of seeing a whole big page of text at one time, which can help. So a lot of it was trial and error, but the deep guide really was such a great place to start because they'd done so much of the work, and it's a really solid text to kind of format to follow. I do want to also shout out one of the other thing that's new in this next issue, volume 13. And I'm going to shout out my dear friend Laurette Clear here, creator of Nana's Books, a fantastic award-winning publication. She and I have luckily become friends over the last couple of years, and she's really done so much for this particular genre of writing. But one of the things that she came across recently was the Atkinson hyperlegible font. And I'm going to get just slightly geeky here for a minute. This is a font that was developed by the Braille Institute in 2019, and they released it for public use in 2021. And this was a font that they created specifically for low vision readers, and they wanted to make a text that was as legible as possible. And so they worked on this. They had a team from, I believe it's called Advanced Design, and I might get that wrong, and I apologize for that, out of Boston, and worked on each character of of the alphabet and the punctuation points and everything to really make this font distinguishable. And so we're using that font in this new issue. Also, Lorette she was talking to me about it because she was going back and reformatting all of her books to reflect this new. So we're always sort of learning, like, what is new out there, what is innovative, as a way to make each sentence, each page as legible and clear as possible for people that might be struggling with written text.
Okay, that's just really cool. Okay, I'm going to go one more writer geeky. I apologize to everybody else because I really am a geek. So, do you have to pay a fee for that font, or is it open source?
No, the beauty of it is if you go to the Braille Institute on the
Yeah.
website, or just type in Atkinson Hyperlegible font into the Google, they have a download button. They've got a new one now. The most recent one is Atkinson Hyperlegible Next, and they just released it for personal, commercial, professional. They're like, we just want this out there, and it's been downloaded and used tens of thousands of times. It's very, very cool. There's a whole story about how they developed it, which I actually wrote a blog post about it because I geeked out on it so hard. It was really fun to just, typography is interesting anyway, and one of the things that we talk about a lot, and one of the elements that we use in Mirador is a sans serif font, right? And so that's just, that little bit of legibility is helpful. So they sort of talk a little bit about, what that, how they kind of came up with even starting, how do you start to write a font? How do you start to create a font? So yeah, no, it's completely free use, and I'll just stop talking about it with this. The Atkinson is named after J. Robert Atkinson, who was the founder of the Braille Institute and was such a great advocate for folks with vision loss.
Okay, so now that we've gone geeky already, I want to show pictures of this. I really do have a couple of, as Nikki said, okay, I'll forward and do this. Mirador magazine. This is a wonderful, wonderful magazine. As you can see, I've got stuff highlighted in here. Okay, let's talk about Pip for a minute because I'm a word find geek. I love to find little things inside the magazines, and you have hidden a little thing in your magazine for people to find.
I do. So yeah, so Find Pip, which is really started out just being for me. It was a throwback for me. So when I was a young person, I was living in New York City, and I would take the double R from Queens into Manhattan. I was going to school, and I would read the New York Daily News. And in the New York Daily News, this is back in when was this? In the mid '80s, there was there was a character, it was a man, and I believe a dog. And the goal was to find where in this big old thick newspaper, where that man and that dog was within the pages of the newspaper. It was kind of a race if I could find that before I got to my stop. And so that always kind of stuck with me, just sort of a fun feature, just sort of an added, they'd probably call it an added value, right? And so when the magazine was kind of coming together, I'm like, I want to do this. I want to do this thing that this guy did in the thing. And so Pip was actually drawn by Sotave Fache, who's the managing art director of the magazine. Her daughter Lucinda actually drew that character, and she drew that that coloring page where that came from. And so I'm like, that's the perfect thing. That's a little sandpiper is a perfect little emblem, I think, for people to find. It's it's whimsical. It's got a nice look to it. And so yeah, so people love it. And I one of the fun things about Mirador is trying to find out, like, what are people really engaging with? What do people like? And I'm like, well, are people going to like this? Or are they not going to like it? Are they going to ignore it? But people do. And they tell me that they do. They tell me that one of the first things they do is to try to find Pip. The second thing people mostly do is go and read The Adventures of Chicken and Dumpling, which is something I actually was resistant to do, and it has turned out to be our most most well-beloved feature in the magazine. And that is it's an 8-panel photo comic of two friends that are always getting in, either getting into a scrape or, it's all very loving and dear. And these two characters live in this sort of whimsical world that people just seem to engage in. And those pictures are me and Atave.
Oh, that is so cool. So I also, okay, we're talking about Tave. So I don't know if you guys can see this, but let me do this in front of me. Box breathing. Okay, I this is one of the most amazing instant gratification self-care techniques you can do in the very first edition of this magazine. They do box breathing, people. This is so cool. I mean, if you want to have a way of getting yourself back to calm, I'm just on my soapbox for a second. This is amazing tool. It'll help you lower your blood pressure, and it's just a calming, wonderful thing. And NIKKI, you have that in your very first issue. I'm so excited about this. But this magazine is so amazing. There are word finds, there are just little different things in here. It's so cool. And you can search on this oh, you can't see it from me doing this, but you can search and circle the things that are you can find in the pictures. It's something for everybody when you're reaching out for this magazine, and to be able to connect. And she's right, the it's wonderful what she's done. Just you can look at the pictures, you can read the stories, and the actually the feeling for this magazine, because it really feels it's a heavyweight, a wonderful quality magazine. And I just am so excited about it. But so NIKKI, I have a question for you now is uh, how are adaptive text materials designed by you? I mean, how do you go, what process do you go through to make this easier for people to make it look so easy on the page, but I know that's not easy.
So yeah, no, I mean, I think it's gotten a little bit easier just because we've kind of gotten used to the format of it. So, one of the there are lots of different elements to this, right? There is what we just talked about. There's the font, right? There's the typeface size. So we run between a 14 and an 18 point large print size. We also use a lot of color, color contrast. So if you are, if you don't want to just have white, a straight white background with black text, it's easier on the eye if you kind of pop it out a little bit with some color. And so we do that. We do, we'll use bordering, and I'm going to shout out the fantastic Kathy Laurenhue, who writes our Light News column, which is the first thing you see. So you'll kind of see how that is bordered and has some color contrast to it. And so that sort of will take the eye, right to that chunk instead of, seeing a bunch of other stuff on the page. We don't have advertising in Mirador. And so there's really nothing to distract from what the goal of each page is, to make sure that people are reading as basically clean a page as possible. So, so those are sort of some of the elements. So bordering, color contrast, using language that is, we're using adult language. We just shorten sentences a little bit. We make sure that, like, if you notice in the magazine, there's no hyphenated words ever. So we make sure that nothing is, no word gets hyphenated from one sentence down to the next. Stories don't continue over pages. They're either on one page or just a single double page spread. So there's nothing that, go to page 14 to read the rest of it. So those are some of the elements that we'll use in the magazine. We always have a page that we call a closer look, which has no text on it at all, ever. So just something that people that might be really struggling with the written word has, something they can fully engage in. One of the things we're also really proud of in Mirador is that we really do our best to use original photography. A photography that's shared with us. We don't tend to use illustrations very often because illustrations can be confusing to the eye. So photographs are a lot easier for people to sort of pick up and see what's going on with that article if they're looking to engage with it. So if it's an article on lighthouses, for example, there'll be pictures of lighthouses as opposed to illustrations of them. So, those are some of the elements that we use. And in Mirador, we also have things like prompts. So, like on this next issue, we'll have a prompt that says, "Imagine yourself in a favorite story," and this is a way also to help engage people.
Oh, and I love the fact that you say imagine because that activates a part of the brain that there's no rule. You can actually just people are allowed to be themselves. It's just a wonderful, wonderful word, and there's no restrictions. That's the
Right,
beauty of it.
exactly. And that's a big part of our work is, we have the formatting of the magazine, we have the content. It was really important for us to have content that spoke to lots of different people and lots of different experiences and really honor the experience and the education of our readers. Um, and that's been a big goal of ours, and it's one of the big pieces of work in adaptive text reading. And again, I'm going to shout out Lorette Clear of Nana's Books, but also Luke Gilligan of the Resense Register, who does a fantastic dementia capable newspaper. And so, these other publishers. So when I was starting, so there wasn't really much going on, and now we're starting to see more of this. In fact, Luke and Lorette and I have actually teamed forces to create a collaboration called Mindful Libraries to, combine our publications, but also to really promote the importance of reading and how reading is so important for engagement of people and really allowing people to find that self identity in the written word. And just, kind of let people know that, you know, as we're as we're looking for resources, that reading is one of those things that is so indicative of a personhood. People that are readers and they're lifelong readers. And many people are lifelong learners. And so, when Rebecca all of a sudden stopped reading, that was an indicator for me. That was a big indicator that something was that she had no longer been able to do the things that she was able to do in this instance. And that was sad for me, and it was sad for her because this was a big piece of her life, being able to read, stories, share them with people, share them with me. Like I said, she was incredibly creative, she was incredibly intelligent, and so, not having materials that were accessible to her that honored that cognitive change and was seemed like a real loss. And so we are really working on getting the word out that this is something that it's a fairly easy fix, right? We just have to not only make materials accessible, but also make them available. We went through this period of time during COVID where reading materials that were already pretty sparse in long-term care were yanked, right? And so even that, now that we know that reading materials don't carry don't carry COVID. They don't need to be wiped down. They need to be quarantined for 72 hours, but they don't need to be completely, wiped and removed. So, making materials accessible is one thing. Making them accessible, actually around so people can pick them up at their leisure, have a newspaper with their morning coffee, look at a magazine in the afternoon, read a book as they're going to bed at night. Having these sorts of materials really reflects the personhood of people, and it's something our group Mindful Libraries is also really trying to promote.
Okay, so that's brings to mind another question that I have. Um, you mentioned that you've got the library that you guys are creating. So are there other adaptive text materials starting to appear now since you started Mirador, or and where is that going?
I mean, I was really surprised. So like I said, I started working on Mirador in 2017, and here we are, almost 8 years later, and there's still not that many of them. To be perfectly honest, there is a fantastic magazine out of Texas called Songs and Smiles, and they do fantastic work. I think they've got 4 or 5 issues out now. There is Ann Obbitz, who does Reminisce books, which are fantastic also. These are short form stories kind of put together in a volume, so like mysteries or romance or whatever, and those are great. There's Lorette with Nana's Books, Luke with the Resense Register, and that's just about it, as far as I know. I mean, and I apologize if I'm leaving somebody out. But as far as these sorts of, formatted materials that are designed to have appeal and designed to sort of, mimic, if you were, actual magazines. Like, I like to say that Mirador is just a magazine that's easier to read. There's nothing really, I mean, yes, it's formatted differently, but the content is just like you would find in any other magazine. Lorette's Nana's books uses beautiful fine art and prose and poetry, and she has books of faith and books of songs and all these sorts of things. They're just formatted differently. Luke Gilligan's newspaper has fantastic nostalgia, and they also do a word search. And what I love about Luke's publication is that he also has an advice column, which is the standard of every newspaper you've ever seen ever. So making these materials that are comforting because they have that familiarity to them. And so but there's still not that many of them. And I'm still surprised about that. Early on, people are like, oh my God, you're going to do this. And then somebody's going to come and do a bunch of them. Yes, let's see that, because there should be that kind of choice. There should be, 50 different versions of Mirador for lots of different things. There should be lots of books. And, there are large print books, but large print books aren't necessarily formatted for people with cognitive change, because you're sort of missing that element of, kind of making things short and digestible so that you can, follow along if you're having retention issues. So, I would love to see more out on the market. So there's a challenge for you, writer Tracy Cram Perkins.
Well, I blab a lot, so I'm sure there'll be other people hearing this.
So yeah, I mean, it feels like a natural, and it feels like one of those things that could really help reduce stigma. And one of the things that broke my heart about Rebecca was that she would call herself dumb. She would call herself stupid. And it would literally break my heart every time, because she was neither of those. And we know, of course, that people don't lose their education with dementia. They lose access to it. They lose ready access sometimes to it. Doesn't make them unintelligent. And so why are we denying the access to materials that can let people express that education, let people express that intelligence, let people share it, give people that access. So,
Well, and I think it's only because we're out there advocating, but most people, because I can speak from the other side as you have, where when we're first starting out, we have no clue and we just assume that's the way it is,
that's
not
right.
really realizing at all that there is more to this than we understand, or even the emotional connection. Because usually, as a caregiver, we're grieving that we're losing the connection, and if we had a tool like Mirador or something else where we can just maintain that connection longer, it would be so amazing. And it is so amazing to see people light up when they are sitting there looking at this magazine, maybe trying to do the crossword puzzle, because yes, there are crossword puzzles in there. I mean, and
Those are actually the hardest things ever. Oh my
yeah,
God, they're the worst.
I can't imagine making a crossword puzzle, but I honor Will
Yeah,
Shortz for his skills, because he can just whip them out.
for real.
But
For
I mean,
real.
it's just having tools to keep connection, and it's not expensive. And oh, let's talk about this. Let's talk about how people can get it, and access.
Okay, so yeah, we have, we have the website miradormagazine.com, and that's where people can pick up Mirador, and it's where people can, write if they have questions, or give me a call. I love talking to folks. And so, but yeah, that's what you were saying, like that sort of that connection. It's so important. It's so valuable. Oh, hey, there you go. Magic of television. There is, the ability to, and we hear this a lot from our readers, that, that they love seeing their mother or their sister or their husband just being able to sit and engage with materials. And I know that this is the same for Nana's books and with Luke, like just being able to see people sort of snap that newspaper open or flip the pages and engage in some art and poetry with Nana's books, or here with this is Jerry, lovely Jerry. Jerry was passed last year. She was 100 years old. She loved this magazine, and I was so lucky to actually get to meet her, because we happen to live in this meet her, and she got to tell me all about this amazing magazine. And it was it was a very proud moment for me. But Jerry is a perfect example. So, Jerry's dementia was fairly minimal, but she also had, advanced age. And so long stories were something that were also difficult for her for her to access. So she really liked the short stories. But Mirador is also created, like you said, it's got that thick paper to it. And so, she was able to set it down and then pick it up the next day and read it just as if, as if it was a new material. So, and she loved learning about it. And that's the thing, this sort of lifelong learning, like, hey, look what I've learned today. We all love that. We all love being, learning new things and being able to share, like, oh my God, I just learned this super cool fun fact about this new font that I had no idea that even existed until somebody told me about it. Right. I'm going to share it with somebody that might be interested in that. Right. That's the human connection right there. That's the beauty of that. And, so whether people are using, engagement tools like art or gardening or cooking or reading, being able to have as many of these resources available. And so we talk a lot about that reading can be one of these things. It is such a fundamental part of ourselves. We start learning how to read at such a young age, and there's a reason for that. It is fundamental to the human experience. And so I'm still baffled as to what, we have children's books that start with our board books, our A, B, C, and we go, we don't go from Clifford the Big Red Dog to Pride and Prejudice, right? We don't make that leap. You know, we have gradations. And so I'm not, it's like, and I think reducing the stigma around the adaptability of reading needs to happen so that we can have a variety of people, a variety of materials, out there that also honor cognitive changes for people, whether you have a dementia diagnosis or you're recovering from brain injury, or whether you're just have vision loss due to aging, like myself. Like I can't see anything past what I'm looking at right now. Just being able to sort of accept where people are at and have materials available for them so that you can continue to engage in your community just as you have been for all these decades.
And I admire that. The fact that you are willing to stand up on your soapbox and say, hey, this is out here and advocate for it. Because again, it's just lack of awareness on most of our parts. We just don't know exists. And it's that curse of knowledge. You don't know what you don't know until you know it. And having that in front of you is just an amazing tool to be able to share with someone so that they can remain engaged. And we've been talking for so much. I'm so excited. We've got about 3 minutes left.
What?
I know.
No.
I know. That's hard to believe.
Well, if I can do a quick shout out for Mindful Libraries, I'm going to do it. And we are actually having a webinar coming up next week. So if people want to learn about that, mindfullibraries.com, they can go to that website and check that out. And so we're going to be talking, me, Lorette, and Luke, talking about adaptive text publications and how they can be utilized within your communities and within your families. And so if that's something people want to learn more about, you'll get to hear from somebody other than me. You get to hear Lorette and Luke, who who also, yeah, there it is right there. And so that is some of the work that we're doing, and pretty proud about it. We're also offering webinars that are CEU. Can't remember the word for it. CEU. You get CEUs for these. So that is, yeah. So that, thank you. So this is a great collaboration. I'm very proud to be involved with it, and so that is something that I'm excited about seeing how this develops, and so that people can get these sorts of materials all in one bundle and learn about how to use them in their communities. And I can't believe now I've just used up another minute probably.
That's okay, because I'm just so excited. I'm going to put this up on my website. I want to make sure that people can get to your library. So I will put that on my resources page.
Thank
And
you.
and I also want to say thank you so much for joining me today. I'm just so excited we got to do this.
Oh my gosh, it was such an honor, and I hope I was able. I can really get going with the talking. So thank you for having me. Thank you for asking me such great questions. It was such an honor to see you and to hang out with you for a little while.
Oh, I just loved it. Well, I thank you. And now For our viewers, we'll be back on April 15th, and our guest will be former Wisconsin Governor Martin Schreiber, an Alzheimer's and dementia advocate, and the author of My Two Elaines. In the meantime, you can go over to our YouTube channel at USA Global TV and Radio and look for Dementia Home Care Playlist, where you will find all of our past episodes. Thank you to the wonderful Dr. Jacqueline for all of her work behind the scenes today, and thank you to our sponsors for making this possible. See you next time, everyone.
5 Little Known Secrets for Dementia Caregivers with Tracy Cram Perkins.
Hi there, I am Tracy Cram Perkins, the host of the Dementia Home Care Show here on USA Global TV and Radio. I am also the author of the book of the same name. And you'll see this QR code. This is for an extended version of this same talk. So if you want to see the full hour-long version, feel free to scan the code and go to that website. Stick with me. We'll talk about 5 little known secrets to make it a little easier to do dementia caregiving. What you're seeing on the left-hand side is a healthy aged brain, age 55 and above. The one you're seeing on the right is an Alzheimer's disease brain. It is in moderate disease. It is shrinking. It has holes in it. The memories that were in those holes no longer exist. When you're learning something, let's say in kindergarten, you learn how to tie your shoelace. Well, then by the time you're in 2nd grade, your brain remembers that information from tying the shoelace and applies it so you can learn more quickly how to tie more complex knots. So the brain is hardwired to do this for us, so it helps us learn faster so it doesn't take us long to acquire knowledge. The brain is looking for the information and they pick the closest to wherever that hole is. Let's look at some tips that we can use to help do that. These are 5 simple tools you can use as a dementia caregiver to help your loved one. The whiteboard is a useful tool in recording the day's activities and the answers to repetitive questions. The calendar clock is a very useful tool to orient your loved one on the day, the date, and the time, and remind them of upcoming appointments. The communication cards are a great tool to bridge the gap when they can no longer tell you what's wrong. And then there's the pill minder, for when your loved one is still able to take pills but needs prompting. The final tool I want to share with you is the memory book. It tells your loved one's story. It's a great tool for distraction, redirection, also as a conversation starter, and telling you where they are in their story so you know how to answer their questions. Music is probably the most powerful tool in your toolbox after laughter. Music is a way to maintain connection. It sticks with your brain longer than any other thing, including reading. When you're having an issue with somebody, you can play their favorite music if you move them to another room, something that makes them happy, or you can start singing songs together from their childhood. These are some of my favorite books for caregivers. My show airs on the 3rd Tuesday of every month, and you can view past episodes on YouTube. Thank you, everyone.
This program has been brought to you in part by Tracy Cram Perkins. Connect with her and order her book at tracycramperkins.com. For more information about Alzheimer's disease, support resources, and how you can help, contact the Alzheimer's Association at 1-800-272-3900 or visit their website at www.alz.org. They offer 24/7 helpline support and a wealth of information to assist you and your loved ones.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/usaglobaltv. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, We're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dyes. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.